When you were looking at that jury, did you have a hunch ever? I noticed one day they came in, they didn't look at you. We don't want to, but did you have a sense of them?
Well, I knew from the location. I mean, we asked for a venue change as soon as we heard this was the venue, because Republicans get virtually, very little vote. I never saw a glimmer of a smile from the jury. No.
What was the jury supposed to smile about? They're not an audience at The Daily Show. But perhaps, Donald Trump never saw a glimmer of a smile from the jury because his eyes were closed for most of the trial. That, or the jury wasn't there to have a good time. They were there to fulfill their civic duty and take the trial seriously. Now, all this would be funny if not for the fact that Trump and his party are insinuating revenge is coming against all of those involved in holding Trump accountable for his crimes. I am joined now by California Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, 2021 impeachment manager and member of the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees, and Paul Butler, MSNBC legal analyst, professor at Georgetown Law School, and former federal prosecutor. I will do congressional. I have to go to the congressman first. I have to go to you first, sir. You were a prosecutor before you were a congressman.
Would have loved to have gone up against Paul. Pretty smart guy.
Right, yeah. But I mean, were you looking for smiles? Is this something Donald Trump should have expected? Smiles?
Yeah, this wasn't a birthday party.
Right.
This was a jury trial with people who didn't want to be there, by the way, right? Like, they didn't want to be there. Their lives were going to be changed forever.
They were scared to be there.
Yeah, but you know what? Donald Trump made all these choices. He chose to live in New York. He chose to commit his crimes in New York. He actually was afforded a jury of his neighbors and chose that jury. So this is a result of his decisions. And that jury, by the way, we say 34 felony convictions. The real number is 408. 12 people made 34 decisions, and 408 straight times they said guilty.
Yeah. And look, the reality is this was a jury, Paul, of people, one of whom said he gets a lot of his news from Truth Social. These were people, there were people who were lawyers, there were people who were speech therapists, they're from all different walks of life. It was a majority white jury, so that's what he wanted. It was a majority male jury. It was an overwhelmingly white male jury, and it still didn't work for him. And this is one of the things, and Trump had a jury consultant. So that means that he helped pick the jury, literally, as the congressman said. Here's what Rolling Stone magazine reported. Some on his legal team and Trump himself convinced themselves that one of the jurors might actually have been on their side. According to two people familiar with the matter, Trump's faith in the amateur body language analysis of the supposedly MAGA-curious juror was so pronounced that at times he took to calling the person my juror in discussions with close allies. My juror found him guilty 34 times.
He wasn't Trump's juror. He wasn't Alvin Bragg's juror. He was an officer of the court in the sense that he was doing what he was supposed to do. So this is an instance in which the jury system worked, the criminal legal system worked. Trump finally experienced equal justice under the law, and that's rocking his world. And the evidence that the system worked isn't that he was convicted, but rather that these 12 people made these over 400 decisions. They deliberated, and they unanimously came to a verdict. Trump, he had the chance to dismiss some jurors for any reason he wanted. So the whole system is designed for buy-in from the person who is convicted if the process is fair. And it's the fairness of the process that Trump can't accept.
Right, and I literally got the chance to sit in that jury room and observe this jury. These were the most serious people. Yes, they weren't smiling because they were serious. They were taking notes. They were diligent. They were watching the judge. They seemed to deeply respect the judge. This was a set of people who clearly were, like, deep into their civic duty. I'm telling you, I saw them with my own eyes. They were not in there playing. They were in there working. And I want to stay with you for a second, Paul, because this is what Jesse Waters had to say about this other jury. Now, this is the jury hearing Hunter Biden, who apparently Joe Biden has weaponized the Justice Department against Hunter because Hunter's getting prosecuted right now. He's in court. He's literally in a trial. This is what Jesse Waters from the Fox, that I don't say the news part, said about that jury. Take a look.
This might seem like an open and shut case, but Jonathan Turley points out Hunter's legal team might have an ace up their sleeve. It's called jury nullification. It's when you pick a jury that will give you a not guilty verdict. They know you're guilty, but they just disagree with the law. The strategy plays on the racial makeup of the jury, which is mostly black, as well as the Biden's influence in Delaware. The hope is this jury won't convict for a drug-related crime.
Someone told Byron Donalds it's the blacks yet again.
Yeah, again, this isn't the kind of case in which you'd expect to see jury nullification. That's when jurors say that the person is not guilty, even though the evidence suggests the opposite. They have that power under the Constitution.
It's what Trump was hoping for in New York.
Exactly. That's the only way that he could have been acquitted, given the evidence. He didn't get that. Now, I doubt that Hunter Biden will get it either. When you think about the way that these people weaponize the prosecution system, just look at the way that they use their pardon power. So again, what the president has said is that he will pardon the former president will pardon the January 6th defendants. He pardoned Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone. The difference, Joe Biden says that if his son is convicted, he will disagree with that verdict, but he will not use his power to pardon
his own son.
It's also absurd to put Donald Trump in the same category as Hunter Biden, who raised his hand and said, I want to accept responsibility, didn't have the plea accepted. He's come and testified to Congress. Trump promises a lot that he's going to testify, has never done that, and again, has acknowledged that if the verdict goes against him, he's not going to trash the jury. He's going to respect it. I still think, though, we are a country where we prefer voting over violence and verdicts over vengeance, and we're going to reject where Trump's trying to take us.
And meanwhile, what Donald Trump is doing, he's begged the Supreme Court to try to help him. He's now got your colleagues in the Republican Party. Here's some of the retaliation that your colleagues, including the Speaker of the House, are vowing. 8 Senate Republicans now vow to oppose all Biden nominees. Democratic legislation: Mike Lee, J.D. Vance, Tommy Tuberville, of course, Eric Schmidt, Marsha Blackburn, Rick Scott, Roger Marshall, and Marco Rubio. You've got the Hill. Speaker Johnson announces he's going to take on the justice system following Trump's conviction. I don't know how. His plan includes using the appropriations process, legislation brought to the floor, and Congress's oversight authority to take on the Justice Department and do I don't know what to them. And now you've got the Speaker, your Speaker, announcing that the 2 new people he's going to add to the Intelligence Committee that you were kicked off of, sir. He's going to add Scott Perry, who was begged for pardon because of his January 6th participation, and Ronnie Jackson, the man who a lot of people thank God did not have to actually touch the former President Barack Obama when he was the White House surgeon.
They're not serious. They are Donald Trump's law firm, and they're a part of a cult. That's their right in America. You can be in a cult, but your constituents would argue that's probably not your responsibility. And so what we just have to show is seriousness. As I said, a country that prefers, voting over violence and verdicts over vengeance. And that's going to win at the end of the day. I don't buy that any American thinks that this is what we should be focused on.
And the other piece of it, Paul, is the real fears that a lot of people have for this jury in New York, because they didn't do what MAGA told them to do. And you do have people on that side trying to dox them, trying to find out who they are. Those people could get hurt because we've seen what these MAGA people are willing to do to members of Congress, to police officers. They're willing to harm people for this cult worship.
The jury was selected finally on a Friday. The Monday of the trial was supposed to start. One of the jurors said she thought about it over the weekend and she just was scared. She didn't think that she could go through with it. The judge said, we will make sure that you are okay. We're going to do everything in our power to take care of you. God willing, there is the chance that these people can be protected. We know that Trump and his supporters, Trump supporters, are doxing people who are against them. And it's, it's really frightening in terms of the rule of law. We had Republicans who, as you say, have adopted this Trump weaponization of the Justice Department. Last week, the governor of Maryland, Republican former governor of Maryland, said that he thought that the verdict should be respected and the legal process allowed to play itself out. Lara Trump, the co-chair of the RNC, said Hogan, the governor, said that doesn't have a place in the Republican Party.
The hero of this story continues to be the American citizen at the ballot box and in the courtroom.
Absolutely. And by the way, in order to be on a jury, you have to register to vote.
That's right.
It's another reason to register to vote so that you can be a part of the process. Representative Eric Swalwell and Paul Butler, thank you, gentlemen, very much.